Walk 2 Moons, Chapter 35, The Plan. All day long we ate up the road through Montana. We hadn't looked so far on the map, but it was all mountains. We started in the foothills of the Rockies as we left Yellowstone, and all day we climbed up and down. Sometimes the road snaked along the side of the cliff, and the only thing between us and the sharp drop was a piddly railing. Often, as we sailed around a bend, we came face to face with the camping trailer swinging its wide body around the curve. "These roads are a dinger," Gramps said. But he was like a little kid riding a hobby horse. "Giddy up, let's move on," he said, encouraging the car up the hill. "Hee-haw," he said as he swept down the other side. I felt as if I was torn in 2 pieces. Half of me was oogling the scenery. I had to admit that it was pretty, as maybe even prettier than Bybanks. Trees and rocks and mountains, rivers and flowers, deer and moose and rabbits. It was an amazing country, an enormous country. But the other half of me was a quivering pile of jelly. I could see our car bursting through a railing and plunging down the cliff. As we approached each curve, I could see us smashing straight on into a truck or a camper. Every time I saw a bus, I watched it sway. I watched its tires spin dangerously close to the gravel at the road's edge. I watched it plunge on, eating up the road, defying those curves. Gram sat quietly with her hands folded on her lap. I thought she might sleep, especially after staying awake all night, but she didn't. She wanted to hear all about Peavey. So all day long, as I took in the scenery and as I imagined us in 1,000 accidents, and as I prayed underneath it all to any tree whizzing by, I talked about Peavey. I wanted to tell it all today. I wanted to finish it. On the day after Mr. Berkway appeared at Phoebe's house and told us about Mr. Cadaver, Phoebe and I put our plan in motion. We were going to track down Sergeant Bickle's son and, according to Phoebe, discover the whereabouts of Phoebe's mother. I wasn't positive that Sergeant Bickle's son was a lunatic, and I wasn't convinced he would lead us to Phoebe's mother. But enough of Phoebe's tales had been transplanted into my brain so that I was caught up in the plan. Like Phoebe, I was ready to take some action. We could hardly sit still all day at school. Phoebe especially was fired up. She was worried too. She was afraid we might not discover her mother alive, and I was beginning to share that fear. At school, everyone was still buzzing about journal readings. Everyone wanted to know who had written about the murder. Alex avoided Mary Lou because of what she had said about his being a pink jerk, and Mary Lou avoided Beth Ann because of what Beth Ann had written about the chicken kisses. Megan and Christy taunted Beth Ann with, "Did you really tell Mary Lou that kisses taste like chicken? Did she really believe you?" And they taunted me with, "Do you really kiss trees? Didn't you know you're supposed to kiss boys?" In English class, everyone badgered Mr. Berkway to finish reading the journal entry that he had begun yesterday, the one about Mrs. Corpse and the body. But Mr. Berkway did not read any more journals. Instead, he apologized for hurting people's feelings by reading their private thoughts aloud, and he sent this to the library. There, Ben trailed me. If I looked at the fiction section, he was right beside me. If I moved over to examine the magazines, there he was, flipping through one as well. Once his face made contact with my shoulder. He was definitely trying to plant a kiss on me. I know he was. There was nothing I could do about it. I could not help it. Whenever he aimed his mouth in my direction, my body was already moving away. I needed a little warning. I tried remaining completely still for several consecutive minutes, and during those minutes I detected Ben leaning slightly toward me several times. Each time, however, he drew back as if someone were controlling him by an invisible thread. Across the library, Beth Ann called, "Sal, there's a spider. Oh, Sal, kill it." And when the final bell rang, Phoebe and I were out of school like a shot. At Phoebe's house, we examined the telephone directory. "We've got to hurry," Phoebe said, "before Prudence or my father comes home." There were 6 Bickles listed in the dictionary. In the directory. Telephone book. We took turns calling. Each time we asked for Sergeant Bickle. The first 2 people said we must have the wrong number. The 3rd number we dialed was busy. The 4th No answer. The fifth was answered by a crotchety woman who said, "I don't know any sergeants." The sixth number was answered by an elderly man who must have been lonely because he talked on and on about once knowing a Sergeant Freeman in the war, but that was back in 1944, and he also knew a Sergeant Bones and a Sergeant Dowdy, but he did not know a Sergeant Bickle. "What are we going to do?" Phoebe wailed. "Prudence will be home any minute, and we still don't know which is the right Bickle." The busy number was still busy. The previously unanswered one rang and rang, and just as Phoebe was about to hang up, she heard a voice. "Hello," she said. "May I speak with Sergeant Bickle, please?" There was a pause as she listened. "He's still at work?" Phoebe was jumping up and down. "Thank you," she said, trying to make her voice sound serious. "I'll call later." No message, thank you." "Yes," she said when she hung up. "Yes, yes, yes." She was hugging me half to death. You'll have to do phase 2 tonight." That night, when my father was at Margaret's, I phoned the Bickles. I prayed that Sergeant Bickle wouldn't answer, but I was prepared to disguise my voice in case he did. The phone rang and rang. I hung up. I rehearsed my voice and what it would say. I tried again. On the 7th ring, the phone was answered. It was Sergeant Bickle. "My name is Susan Longfellow," I said. "I'm a friend of your son's. I was wondering if I might speak with him." I prayed and prayed that he had only one son. "He isn't here," Sergeant Bickle said. "Would you like to leave a message?" "Do you know when he'll be home?" There was a pause. "How did you say you know my son?" This made me nervous. "How do I know your son?" "Well, that's a long story. The way I know him is, actually, this is a little embarrassing to admit." My hands were sweating so much I could hardly hang on to the phone. "The library. Yes, I know him from the library, and he loaned me a book, but I've lost the book." "Maybe you should explain this all to him," Sergeant Bickle said. "Yes, maybe I should do that. I wonder why he gave you this phone number. I wonder why you didn't give him his number at school." "At school? Actually, the thing is, I think he did give me that number too, but I've lost it." "You sure lose a lot of things," he said. "Would you like his number at school?" "Yes," I said. "Or better yet, maybe you could just give him his address and I'll send him the book." "I thought you said you lost the book." "Actually, yes, but I'm hoping to find it," I said. "I see." He said, "Just a minute." There was a muffled pause, and he put his hand over the receiver and called, "Honey, where's Mike's address?" Mike! Brilliant! A name! I felt like the chief inspector. I felt like I had just discovered the most important clue in the criminal investigation of the century. To top it off, Sergeant Bickle gave me Mike's address. I was sorely tempted to enter the conversation by informing Sergeant Bickle that his son was a potential lunatic, but I refrained. I thanked him and immediately phoned Phoebe. "You're brilliant," she said. "Tomorrow we'll nail Mike the lunatic." Chapter 36. The Visit. The next day, Saturday, when Phoebe and I reached the bus stop, Ben was standing there. "Oh, crud," Phoebe muttered. "Are you waiting for this bus? Are you going to Chanting Falls?" "Yep," he said. "To the university?" "Nope." Ben pushed his hair from his eyes. "There's a hospital there. I'm going to go see someone." "So you're taking this bus?" Phoebe said. "Yes, Phoebe. I am taking this bus. Do you mind?" The three of us sat on a long bench at the back of the bus. I was in between Phoebe and Ben, and his arm pressed up against mine. Phoebe said we were visiting an old friend at the university. Each time we rounded a curve, Ben leaned against me, or I leaned against him. "Sorry," he said. "Sorry," I said. At Chanting Falls, we stood on the pavement as the bus rode off. "The university is over there," Ben pointed down the road. "See ya." And he walked off in the other direction. "Oh, Lord," Phoebe said, "why did Ben have to be on the same bus? It made me very nervous." It made me nervous, too, but for a different reason. Every time I was with him now, my skin tickled and my brain buzzed and my blood romped around as if it were percolating. The address we had for Mike Bickle was a freshman dormitory. It was a 3-story brick building with hundreds of windows. "Oh, no," Phoebe wailed. "I thought it might be a little house or something." Students were coming in and out of the building and walking across the lawn. Some were sitting on the grass and benches and studying. In the lobby was a reception desk with a handsome young man standing behind it. "You do it," Phoebe said. "I just can't." We stood out like pickles in a pea patch. There were all these grown-up college students, and here we were, two puny 13-year-old girls. Phoebe said, "I wish I had worn something else." She picked lint off her sweater. I explained to the man at the desk that I was looking for my cousin, Mike Bickle. The young man smiled, white smile at me. He checked a roster and said, "You're in the right place, room 209, you can go on up." Phoebe nearly choked. "You mean we could go right up to his room?" "Sure," the young man said. "Through there." We walked through swinging doors. Phoebe said, "Really, I'm having a heart attack." "I know it. I can't do this. Let's get out of here." At the end of the hall, we slipped out the exit. What if we knocked on his door and he opened it and pulled us inside and slit our throats? Students were milling around on the lawn. I looked for an empty bench on which we might sit. On the far side of the lawn, I saw the backs of two people, a young man and an older woman. They were holding hands. She turned to him and kissed his cheek. Phoebe. On the bench was Phoebe's mother, and she was kissing the lunatic.